Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Evan McCauley, president of the club, and we are thrilled to have you joining us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. Come out and join us for a meeting. We'd love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact that we are having on the local community and world, please visit rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and be the inspiration.
Vowed for revenge. They vowed for revenge. Hannibal's father, Hamilcar, an unbeaten general, and he was very upset because he had been unbeaten in the field. No one had beaten him, but Carthage surrendered. He decided after the First War what he was going to do. He was going to sail to Spain. Think of the guts of this. Sail to Spain with a troop and conquer Spain. The idea being the Carthaginians are going to conquer Spain, use all of those conquered people to now go after Rome. That was the big strategy. Can't go all into it, but the big story to demonstrate the grit of the Carthaginians, there's a true story when Hannibal was a little boy who we're talking about. He was taken by his father to the temple of Baal. Baal is the major god of Carthage. And we're not talking about some sissy god. This is a god. They would do human sacrifices to Baal when there was a time of supreme challenge for the Carthaginians. They would pitch your firstborn baby boy infant into the fires of Baal. And they thought for many, many years that this was Roman propaganda. But archaeologists have found the calcified infant remains of these babies. They found the actual plaque showing fathers throwing their children into the fires of Baal. This is a tough people. The story is that Hannibal was a boy who was 9 years old, and Hamilcar, his father, is going off to Spain, and Hannibal says, "Dad, take me with you. I want to be his soldier." And his dad says, "Nah, I'll get you later. I'll get you. You're a little bit too young." He said, "No, I want to go." He says, "I'll get you later." And Hannibal kept insisting, so Hamilcar picked him up, dragged him to the temple, and held him over those fires at Baal and said, "If I take you, do you promise to your dying day to hate the Romans? Do you promise to do everything in your power to destroy Rome?" He said, "Yeah, Dad, I promise." And that was the thing. At that moment, Hamilcar took Hannibal to Spain. Hannibal spent his entire life, from 9 years old on, living in soldiers' camps, being a part of the total subjugation of Spain. And it was guerrilla warfare. It was brutal. It was rough. But they subjugated most of Spain and got all those troops together. I need to skip way ahead. So you've got Hannibal. Now Hannibal, different things happen, but when he's 21 years old, different political machinations, he becomes head of the Carthaginian army. He decides at that time, it's time to go. I promised my dad I hated Rome, let's go for this. So what he picks a fight with the Romans. And in picking that fight with the Romans, he wants to start a war, and he does. So now what does he do? This is the gutsiest thing in the history of gutsiness. Okay, so what he decides is we got to invade. We got to go. And the thing is, after the First Punic War, the Carthaginians, their navy was taken away. Rome has total superiority in the ocean. So there's no need for an amphibious invasion. You can't do it. Carthaginians have got to get to Rome somehow. How do you do it? Well, we're going to cross the Alps. That's insane. It was so insane that the Romans didn't even think it was a possibility. This could never happen. So that's where he went. So what you've got is with 59,000 men, Hannibal decides he's going to leave New Carthage in Spain, and over 1,000 miles away, he's got to get to the north of Italy. So he begins. He's got 59,000 men, 39 elephants, and he's heading off. Here he goes, and here's the challenge. He's heading up. He's got to get across the Pyrenees, which is no small matter. But the part that people sometimes forget is he's got to get across hostile Gaelic territory. These folks do not want him to go. It's not like he's taking a stroll up the mountains. That he's going through tribe after tribe, and they're doing everything they can to stop him. He has got to go, because you got to understand, war is declared. What you've got is Rome has already sent an army to to Sicily to invade Carthage. Rome's going to go for the jugular, and they're also sending another. He's got to get to northern Italy now. So he is driving his folks. He's driving all the way to the point they get up. He gets to the river Rhone. So you've got Hannibal now. He's got 59,000 men. He's been fighting his way through Gauls the entire time, and he's now got a huge river to get through. He finds out as soon as he gets to this river that a major Roman army has landed at Massalia, which is modern-day Marseille, about 10 miles to his side. So he's got a major Roman army to his side. He's got to go through. The problem is there's an entire Gallic army on the other side of the river. He's got to get his folks across now. He's got a Roman army coming up. What does he do? This is the surprise. This is the, and you got to think about it, 59,000 people. You can't send them over a canoe at a time, right? The entire shore is covered with tens of thousands of people who will slaughter his troops. He's got to get all of his men over in one shot. So they cut down every tree they find. They build rafts. They do whatever. They build canoes. Thousands of people are going to head over. What they do is the night before, he has 4,000 cavalry ride 20 miles up the river, make it across, and come over, and they have their hooves sheathed so no one hears them. The idea is they get over that river, they're going to go, they're on all these ships, they make it over. As soon as they're over, there's a signal. Their 5,000 men come out from behind, they ambush the Gauls, and they're able to get across. Very cool. So they've gotten there, the Romans are still coming, it's their first big step. But now we've got the elephants. Elephants don't like crossing water. Elephants don't mind running into armed troops, but they don't want to cross water. How do you get these elephants across? Once again, you're building all this stuff. The Romans are coming. You're running out of food. What you do, or what they did, they built these huge piers out into the water. Huge piers. And on either side of the pier, they did some landscaping, and they built some trees and things up to make it higher than the elephant. They put a big raft at the end of this pier. Imagine building all this. Once again, a high pressure. They would take a female elephant, walk the female elephant out, 4 males would follow, and they would get out on this, they get on this raft and they push the raft off. The elephants didn't like it much, but they made it across. Elephant by elephant, they got these things across the river. They finally got all 37 elephants across. They get them across and they're going. So now they're still going through Gaul. They're fighting their way the entire way. Now it's September. Now it's September, and they are looking at the Alps. He's got this army. Right now, if you go to the Alps in September, pass after pass, Vermeil. Vermeil, it means closed. Closed for the snow. Now it says closed for the snow. In 218 BC, these guys got to get over the Alps with winter approaching with this army. Go, man. This is the audacity. So he goes. He's going up over these, and as he's going, he's fierce resistance, fierce. He has to fight his way into the Alps, fight his way. Think about those that own businesses that have to motivate your employees. My employees show up in the morning at the Impact Group. They've got their coffee. I'm trying to get everybody going. You're trying to motivate your employees to go through the friggin' Alps in the middle of winter, right? So they're going up there. They're fighting and they're fighting. They find that they're casting stones in them. People are dying. They found through intelligence that if they the natives at night, they like to go home and get a nice bowl of oatmeal and sleep in their beds. So they vacate the high ground. They go home. Hannibal's men have to climb the cliffs in the middle of night to deny the other people the ability to get up there. They do it. They get through. First, so they're going through another situation. They're absolutely attacked, almost driven out of the Alps. He has to bring up his elephants to get them back. These Gauls, they're fierce. They're trying to get through. The food is running out. The next time the Gauls come to them and they've got the olive branches, that's where the branch comes in. When they want to have a talk of peace, what you do is have a huge branch and you approach the army that says peace. Another characteristics of a leader is knowing your opponent. Hannibal can look him in the eye and he knows they're lying. They have no intention of being peaceful. So as he's going through, he puts all of his Carthaginians in the rear. They're attacked again and he gets through. So they're going. All of this has happened. Now there's a tremendous avalanche, a huge avalanche. Boulders, the trail is absolutely destroyed. His scouts come back and say, there's no way to get through. There's no way, we are stuck. So Hannibal, does he go back? Does he fight his way all the way back through those Gallic tribes? And then, remember, he has to get to northern Italy now. There's no Romans there. He's got to go now. So he takes his men up all these boulders, and this is winter. They're on an area now where the snow is fallen so much that it hasn't cleared from last year. Brings all of his folks up. They start chipping away at these boulders with chisels. They're rolling the boulders over. They're with mules and with men. They clear that path in the dead of winter, and they get through. They get through. When they finally get, and they can see Italy, he began with 57,000 men. He ends with 26,000 men. That has been the cost of those 2 months. 26,000 men, 6,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, 20,000 have made it through. That's something else. That is a loss. People falling off cliffs, people starving. But every one of those 37 elements has made it through. Think about that as a leader. Think about having to prioritize where we have to go. It's kind of a brutal example. Do you think it's an accident that all 37 of those elephants went through and he lost 20-something thousand people? His priority was to get those elephants through. By God, he did. He got the elephants through. Now they are in northern Italy. He's there. What he has found, though, is that the Romans are friggin' tough. Romans don't back out. So he's now in northern Italy. He's popped out. He's beginning to refresh his folks. But the army that was here under Scipio has sailed over and has joined. There was another army in Sicily, 800 miles away. And that army was told, you will report in northern Italy in 40 days. They're 800 miles away. In 40 days, you will be in northern Italy. If you're not there, it means death. And they made it there. Isn't that funny how that happened? They made it there. So now Hannibal comes out, and he stepped all that effort. After being decimated, he has now 2 Roman armies opposing him. What was his strategy? Why was he doing this? As I said earlier, Rome could put 500,000 men in the field, but they weren't Romans. They were the allies. His strategy, Hannibal, is if I can go to Italy and win 2 or 3 major battles, all of those allies who really hate Rome will revolt, and then together we can crush Rome. That is the strategy. That is what he's doing. He needs to get to Italy to have a couple huge, crushing victories. Oops. Now let me tell you really quick about these elephants. I keep talking about the elephants. The elephants are the tanks of the ancient world. When you think of elephants, I'm not talking about Dumbo with the cute ears and flying around. I'm talking about a war elephant. I'm talking about these things are trained to fight. It's the only animal that can actually be trained to be a combatant. Horses can run people down, dogs can guard. Elephants stomp people. They smash people to trees. They are loyal to their riders. They are absolutely tough. They are just absolutely conditioned. Cavalry cannot stand up against them. They're terrified. If you put these things in a battle, the other army just dissipates. This was warfare at its most brutal place. And the Carthaginians knew that this was their trump card. This is a nice picture of them making it through the Alps, freezing their tails off. Okay, really quick, I'm going to tell you about a Roman soldier as we get into this. A Roman soldier of the Republican era carried about a 30 to 35 pound shield. The shield was very heavy. It had this embossed piece in the front, which is a formidable weapon in itself. You can smash somebody's face and do whatever he had to do. The Roman army also had pilum. These are spears that wouldn't be used as a spear, but as a throwing mechanism. As the Roman army would engage, they would fight in 3 rows. The first 2 rows would launch these pilums. Imagine thousands and thousands of these things raining down on you. It had the effect of about a Revolutionary War musket shot at about 70 yards, if you can imagine. Devastating. You throw these things and thousands hit your enemy that stapling their shields together, stamping feet to the ground. Awful. They had their greaves, their helmet, about 70 pounds of armor altogether as they move forward. Very, very disciplined men. Carthaginians. The Carthaginians, as we get going, there are many different, it's a polyglot army. The Carthaginians themselves would have 16-foot spears, very much like Alexander the Great. As they'd advance, there would be 16-foot spears, and if you can imagine, there'd be 5 spear points per person moving, so thousands of spear points moving toward you. The Carthaginians, they had their Spaniards who were horsemen. They had the Gauls. The Gauls fought naked, God bless them. They fought naked, they wore their bracelets, they wore their war armor, and they had 6-foot, these swords, which would cut a person in half. Just brutal, brutal war fighters. Different folks. They're Numidians. The Numidian were the cavalrymen from northern Africa, hugely powerful, very, very mobile. These are the Carthaginians. Okay, 3 main engagements. How are we doing on time here? We good? Okay. So you've got the Carthaginians are now in northern Italy. The Romans are there. Rome has an interesting government system. They have the Senate, of course, we've all heard of. They have 2 consuls. Rome always has, at the head of its republican government, 2 consuls, essentially 2 executives. The idea is the Romans were very, very afraid of dictatorship. So they would always have a situation, 2 consuls. The one consul could always veto another in domestic affairs, always veto. But when you're in the field in war, you can't have somebody vetoing the other person. So they had the interesting system that as they're on war, if the 2 consuls are together with an army, one person leads one day, the next day the next consul leads, the next day the next consul, right? So this is the way it works. As they're doing, Hannibal knew from intelligence that one of the consuls was a total hothead. The other was kind of cool under fire. Hannibal waited until the morning he had the hothead. He knew it. 2 days before, Hannibal had allowed his cavalry to be beaten. He put them out there, let them be beaten, let the Romans think they're pretty cool, right? So he did that. So in the morning that he knew the hothead consul was what he did, northern Italy, he sent his Carthaginians out well before dawn. Made a huge havoc, like they were rushing to the Carthaginian camp. Remember, everybody's in camps. They can't attack if they're in their camps. Huge ruckus. All this, we're gonna just make it as though we're gonna attack. And then the consul raises everybody. They're in their sleeping bags, whatever they're sleeping there. Everybody's get up. There's no breakfast. Get up. It's freezing. It's raining out. It's freezing. It's sleeting. Gets everybody up. The Carthaginians retreat. There's a river in the middle. It's a little river. They retreat and go back in their camp. But this Roman, he's like, I'm gonna get those guys. They're cowardly. So he gets all of his men up, marches them across at 5 in the morning, across this river, up to their necks, 30 degrees, sleeting, snow. Has them stand out in front of the Carthaginian fort. The Carthaginians have gone in 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. His men are out there in 70 pounds of armor, freezing their tails off, right? Carthaginians are in their camp eating big bowls of oatmeal and kind of hanging out. These Romans are cold. These Romans are hungry. When the Carthaginians come out, the Romans are totally demoralized. What the Romans don't know, the night before, you see a reoccurring tactic, Hannibal had thousands of his men here, concealed them way in the back. They didn't know they are wet and cold. They've been out all night. But the Romans are here. You remember I told you about the spears, those pilum? They're cold. They have a leather purchasing device which allows you to throw them well. Everything is frozen. Nothing is working. The Carthaginians come out. The Romans can't fire effectively. They engage. And the Carthaginians are just ravaging them. As they're being pushed back, these demoralized, cold men, these folks come out from the back, catch them, destroy the entire Roman army. 15,000 dead, 15,000 taken prisoner, a big deal. Romans, no one can remember when the Romans were beaten before. So all of a sudden now the Allies are beginning, their coalition is beginning to fracture. So this occurs. And now that the Romans, they don't quite know what to do. They've never been beaten. Where is Hannibal going to go? He is now heading south. There's an area through the Pyrenees. There's one specific area which is impassable. It's full of swamps. No one has ever gone through this swamp because you can't do it. So that's what he did. So he takes his army. He's trying to get to southern Italy, goes through this swamp. Once again, up to their necks, he's trying to get his entire army across through this awful swamp. They have thousands of pack animals. The pack animals are dying like crazy. At night, they have to sleep on the dead animals. You're in a swamp. You got to sleep on something, right? So they're bringing the animals until they die. They're sleeping on them. The 4th day, they get through that swamp. Once again, talk about leadership. Talk about motivating people. In our world right now, you're motivating people in dire circumstances. We got to get through that swamp. He gets through. In this circumstance now, so the second major battle, you've got another situation where you've got a hothead consul, and you got somebody who kind of uses their head a little bit. There's something called Lake Trasimene. It's an old volcanic lake in Italy. It's very, very peaceful, very cool lake. And the Carthaginians are not very difficult to find. And that should have made the Roman leader a little worried about this. Because you're going to see a similar thing. What we've got is Carthaginian camp. The Roman is like, I got to beat this army. So he goes to Lake Trasimene, the entire Roman army, Carthaginians, the Romans, and there's an approach. Now, this should have made the Roman a little nervous, because this lake, there's a huge slope. There's about this much flat area at the bottom of that lake going up to the Carthaginian camp. But once again, we got to get him. The Romans are fighters, right? So he's going, his entire army, he's going to take it across the Carthaginian camp. His scouts have told him, all the Carthaginians are there, everything's looking good. So they're getting close. The Carthaginian war drums are coming out, and gosh, all the Carthaginians seem to be there. The spearmen, the Numidians, it looks pretty good for the Roman general. But what they don't know, up in these hills, it's early morning, there's mist and woods, all of the Gauls, thousands and thousands and thousands of these ferocious warriors are just hiding in the hills. Romans don't see them. Romans go through. As soon as the Romans enter the trap, the Carthaginians, once again, all of their horsemen, if you can imagine, they put cloth around their hooves, they muffle the bells, they move silently through the night. As soon as the Romans enter, Carthaginians come around, close the gap, Gauls come down. Another 15,000 Romans dead, another 15,000 Romans captured, drive them into the lake. Now Rome is in a panic, an absolute panic. Something like this has never, ever happened before. What do? They take the extreme approach of appointing a dictator. Roman and Roman Republic could appoint a dictator. They appointed a Fabius, this guy who is an ancient family. For 6 months, this dictator could do anything they wanted. 6 months, they appoint this individual to lead Rome. And how am I doing in time? How much time do I have left?
5 to 7.
What's that?
5 to 7 minutes.
5 to 7 minutes?
We're almost 10.
5 to 7? Okay, 10. I'm going to wrap this up. So there's Fabian. He decided what we're going to do is avoid a major battle with the Romans. Major battle with the Carthaginians. The Romans are going to avoid it because we can't win. This guy's too good. You remember in the Civil War a little bit, they kept saying, all we got to do is find a general to beat the genius of Lee. Oh, it took quite a while. It took quite a while to find that person, right? Fabian is like, we are going to wait. We are not going to engage. There's something called Fabian tactics. Anybody that studies the Revolutionary War, that was General Washington. General Washington's genius was not a battlefield commander. He kept that army moving and harassing the British all those years. The idea was just to not engage and not lose. Fabian takes control for a while. There's different circumstances occur. He then is deposed, and they bring up the next fighting general. I want to talk about, I'm going to end this with where I began it, Cannae. So now that the Romans they're getting the idea. They're smart. Like, look, we get ambushed every stinking time. we got to use our heads here. This isn't working. So after the second battle, the Romans decided we are going to make the biggest army of history. They got 80,000 men. 80,000. Progressive Field holds 35,000 people. Imagine Progressive Field times 2 plus 4. 80,000 men. We're going to go out and we are going to destroy this Hannibal once and for all. And at this point, Hannibal is happy this is occurring because Fabian has been winning. This Fabius has been following up and down the Italian peninsula. And you got to understand that the Carthaginian forces, Polybius, the historian, called them the scum of the earth. These are people, they live on plunder, on destroying. If they don't have something to plunder, if they didn't have people to kill, they're going to disperse. Hannibal needs somebody to kill. And he hasn't been able to do that for years now because the Fabian's been following him around. Now he's got his chance. Had the Romans not engaged in this battle, likely Hannibal would have had to have dispersed and left because his men needed plunder. But the Romans, they got upset, so they're going to come. So 80,000 people. Now here's the key. 80,000 Romans. Carthaginians have 40,000. The Carthaginians, the Roman plan was use your superior numbers, break through the Carthaginian center, and separate them, roll them up, annihilate them. The Carthaginians decide what we're going to do is we're going to put our Gauls in the middle, crack Carthaginian troops in the side, and we're going to retreat into a semicircle. what happens is the Romans are pushing, the flanks are in no way, the Carthaginians are giving any resistance, so all of the energy of the Romans starts to go in the center. Everybody is pushing to the center. Everybody's pushing to the center until in a signal the Gauls hold. The Carthaginians wrap around. One thing that the Romans did not have, the Romans, as outnumbered as the Carthaginians were, the Carthaginians had far more cavalry. The cavalry swept the Roman cavalry from the field and closed behind. They found you can be just as trapped in an open field. I want you to wrap your noodle around this. This is an awful scene. 70,000 men, 80,000 men are now, they're now being compressed. You can't move. You can't, people are dying. I mean, think of this warfare. This is not an artillery shell. This is not a bullet. This is, if you're killing someone, you're this close to them. I mean, that's the way this happens with the spears. This begins to collapse and collapse and collapse. They are surrounded. They can't do anything. Their intestines and just bowels, and just imagine this. They're going again and again and again. They compress this. At the end of this battle, at the end of Cannae, 70,000 Romans are killed. Killed, not on prisoner. 70,000 men on that field of battle. Once again, think of progressive field. 35,000 capacity. Twice that number dead. On an August day, I mean, can you imagine? It's hot. And people, it wouldn't be just simply dying. People are there moaning. They haven't had water for hours. Can you imagine the carnage of that day? 70,000 killed at the Battle of Cannae. And it was the sweetest sound in the world to Hannibal. That is what he had gone for his entire life, that moment. The question is, and I can't get into it today, if indeed that occurred, why did Hannibal and the Carthaginians ultimately lose? This was the high tide. This was their supreme moment of victory, but yet they ultimately lost. I want us to think of battlefield tactics and such. Anytime in life we're going up against someone, know your enemy, look them in the eye, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and whatever you do, find a way or make one. You'll make it in this life. Thanks very much. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Dang. Yes.
Just ask it anyway.
You said 70,000 Romans were killed. How many of the other troops were killed?
About 7,000 to 10,000. It was way out of proportion. They had a lot of carnage, but it was way out of proportion. Once again, their tactics had them all bottled up.
Yeah. Wow.
And imagine, because they're taught to fight a certain way in these three lines. As soon as your unit collapses upon itself, you really can't fight. Imagine the terror of that. Being so smashed.
How long did that take?
This battle? A couple hours. I mean, it didn't take, if you can imagine, it buckled in, came in a couple hours. And the way these folks fought, and at this point the Carthaginians were fighting as the Romans did. They had so much Roman equipment. You had your shield, and you had your sword, and all the flailing around stuff you don't have. You simply, with your men, you take your sword, you advance and cut. Advance and cut. So they just kept advancing and pushing again and again. Yes?
So you talk about plunder. I always thought of plunder going into a town and taking over the town and taking everything out. You're talking about from the opposing soldiers?
Oh yeah, all the above. I mean, after this battle, bushel baskets, bushel of Roman rings were poured out on the floor of the Roman Senate. I mean, every Roman soldier had a ring, and in the field of battle, hands were swollen, legs were, you cut off the hand, take off arms. So yeah, the plunder of the soldiers, you take all their weapons, you strip the field, but also you very much denude the entire countryside. Just brutal. I don't think we as Americans can in any way conceptualize the brutality of those ages. It was entirely a different period. Yes?
So, other than the fear of death, what made Hannibal a great motivator? I mean, other than, if I turn back, my whole squad's down. If I fall asleep, I'm done. What did he do that kept people going forward?
He was a genius, and people they appreciated his genius. They knew that they were a part of a winning army. Just the confidence that plunder would keep coming. And obviously, that's a good question. He rewarded those amply who did well. But Machiavelli did an interesting piece. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he specifically talked about Hannibal and talked about how historians can't have it both ways. Historians say Hannibal was a horrible, brutal person, and he was an amazing general. Okay. Is it possible that that brutality was a part of his being an amazing general? You can't have it both ways, right? So you can't always do that. But I mean, if you're late for an assembly, they cut off your ear. How about that for your next company meeting? Okay, if you're late for an assembly, they don't mess around. So you're rewarded hugely, but if you don't, man, you're in some serious trouble.
That's the rule.
Is that the school district?
What happened to the elephants?
That's a good question. After the first battle at the river, after all that effort, all but one of those poor elephants caught cold and died. They all got sick and they died. The one elephant named Cyrus, that one elephant made it, and Hannibal rode that elephant the rest of the time. But 36 of those elephants died after that first engagement. But they served their task. They were the deciding factor in that first battle. Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was a wonderful, thrilling way to wrap up our History Month. Thank you very much. And that's a segue also. We're talking about chopping off ears if your employees aren't in on time and whatnot. Coming up is Labor Day, as you all know. So whether it's in the office or at Rotary, at your church, wherever it is, anybody that you work with or that works for you, reach out and give them a nice compliment. Do something special for them, because that's important. Respect people for their labor, and I hope you all enjoy a nice Labor Day. Please don't forget the hot dogs. If the hot dogs stay here until 2 weeks from now, since we're not meeting here next week, it might smell a little bit in here. So let's throw some dollars in the cooler, take some hot dogs home, enjoy it. Other than that, thank you all for being here. We've got Rotabuck, which I am always forgetting about. So thank you, Joe. And if our special guest, Leah, could draw the winning raffle ticket, we will be good to go. Make some good copies. All right, the last four, and the jackpot this morning is $124. The payout is $10. Last four, 7275.
That's me.
Yeah, Donna. Good try. Give you $10. So thanks for being here, Mike. Appreciate you showing up. I hope that you had a good time and come back and see us. Leah, we'll see you soon. I hope you have a great day at school. And everybody, enjoy the Labor Day weekend, and we'll see you at Camp Manitowoc next week.